Ladies and gentlemen, we have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
All right, so pretty significant scientific announcement. This guy announces that LIGO has detected a gravity wave. And shout out to this guy who posted a link to a rebuttal to LIGO's detection of a gravitational wave. We're going to read this paper and see why it changed his mind. So, without further ado, a critical analysis of LIGO's recent detection of gravitational waves caused by merging black holes. Stephen J. Crothers. Abstract. The LIGO Scientific Collaboration and Virgo Collaboration have announced that on 14 September 2015, LIGO detected an Einstein gravitational wave directly for the first time with the first observation of a binary black hole merger. The announcement was made with much media attention. Not so long ago, similar media excitement surrounded the announcement by the BICEP 2 team of detection of primordial gravitational waves printed in B-mode polarization of a cosmic microwave background, which proved to be not. According to the LIGO and Virgo collaborations, the gravitational wave LIGO allegedly detected was generated by two merging black holes, one of approximately 29 solar masses and the other of approximately 36 solar masses, at a distance of some 1.3 billion light years. The insurmountable problem for the credibility of LIGO's claim is the questionable character of the theoretical assumptions upon which they are based. In this paper, various arguments are presented according to the basic theoretical assumptions, and the consequential claims of detecting gravitational waves are proven false. The apparent detection of LIGO-Virgo collaboration is not related to gravitational waves or the collision and merger of black holes. 1. Introduction. The LIGO Scientific Collaboration and the Virgo Collaboration have announced that on the 14th of September 2015 at 9:50:45 UTC, they detected a transient Einstein gravitational wave designated GW150914, produced by two merging black holes forming a single black hole. Two black holes that merged are reported to have been of approximately 29 solar masses and approximately 36 solar masses, respectively. The newly formed black holes at 62 solar masses, radiating away approximately 3 solar masses as Einstein gravitational waves. Reported detection was obtained not during an observation run of LIGO, but during an engineering test run prior to the first scheduled run on 18 September 2015. Quote, in the early morning hours of September 14, 2015, during an engineering run just days before official data taking started, a strong signal consistent with the merging of black holes appeared simultaneously in the two observatories located in Hanford, Washington and Livingston, Louisiana, end quote. On over. Quote, the 8th engineering run, ER8, began on 2015, August 17 at 1500 hours, and critical software was frozen by August 30. The rest of ER8 was to be used to calibrate the detectors, to carry out diagnostic studies, to practice maintaining a high coincidence duty cycle, and to train and tune the data analysis pipelines. Calibration was complete on September 12, and 01 was scheduled to begin on September 18. On 2015, September 14, CWB reported a burst candidate to have occurred at 9:50:45 seconds with a network signal to noise ratio of 23.45, end quote, Abbott and others. Magnitudes with the error margins have been presented by the LIGO-Virgo collaborations for the masses of the black holes, along with other related source quantities under Table 1. We have Table 1 here. You can look at that yourself, and we'll just keep reading. There are by two ways which the LIGO report can be analyzed. A, examination of the interferometer operation and data acquisition, and B, consideration of the theories of black holes and gravitational waves upon which all else relies. Only theoretical considerations are considered herein, as there is no need to analyze the LIGO apparatus and its signal data to understand that the claim for detection of Einstein gravitational waves and black holes is built upon theoretical fallacies and conformational bias. 2. Gravitational waves, black holes, and big bangs combined. Presumably, the gravitational waves reported by the LIGO Virgo are present inside some Big Bang expanding universe, as there has been no report that Big Bang cosmology has been abandoned. Of the gravitational wave detection, the LIGO Virgo collaborations have stated, quote, it matches the waveform predicted by general relativity for the in-spiral and merger of a pair of black holes and the ring down of the resulting black hole. End quote. Abbott and others. All purported black hole equations are solutions to corresponding specific forms of Einstein's nonlinear field equations. Gravitational waves, on the other hand, are obtained from the linearization of Einstein's nonlinear field equations, combined with a deliberate selection of coordinates that produce the assumed forward propagation at the speed of light in a vacuum. Because general relativity is a nonlinear theory, the principles of superposition does not hold. Let X be some black hole universe and Y be some Big Bang universe. Then the linear combination, i.e. superposition, X plus Y, is not a universe. Indeed, X and Y pertain to a completely different set of Einstein field equations, and so they have nothing to do with one another. The same argument holds if X and Y are both black hole universes, be they the same or not, and if X and Y are Big Bang universes, be they the same or not. Consequently, a black hole universe cannot coexist with any other black hole universe or any other Big Bang universe. All black hole universes, 1, are spatially infinite, 2, are eternal, 3, contain only one mass, 4, are not expanding, i.e., are not non-static, 5, are either asymptotically flat or asymptotically curved. All Big Bang universes, 1, are either spatially finite, one case k equals 1, or spatially finite, two different cases, k equals -1, or k equals 0. 2 are of infinite or of finite age, approximately 13.8 billion years. 3 contain radiation in many masses. 4 are expanding, i.e. non-static. 5 are not asymptotically anything. Note also that no black hole universe even possesses a Big Bang K curvature. It is clearly evident that black holes and Big Bang universes cannot coexist by their very definitions. All the different black hole solutions are also applicable to stars, planets, and the like. Thus, these equations do not permit the presence of more than one star or planet in the universe. In the case of a body such as a star, the only significant difference is that its space-time does not bend to infinite curvature at the star, because there is no singularity and no event horizon in this case. Newton's theory, on the other hand, places no restriction on the number of masses that can be present. Since a black hole universe is a solution to a specific set of Einstein's nonlinear field equations, it is not possible to extract from it any gravitational waves that are produced from a linearized field equation. No gravitational waves can in fact be extracted from Einstein's nonlinear field equations. Superimposing solutions obtained from the nonlinear system with those from the linearized system violates the mathematical structure of general relativity. Accordingly, contrary to the report of the LIGO Virgo collaborations, gravitational waves cannot exist in any black hole universe. Neither can they exist in any Big Bang universe, because all Big Bang models are in fact single mass universes by mathematical construct. Nonetheless, the LIGO Virgo collaborations superimpose everything. And then he has a little model here. There's some data showing that, and we'll read what it says. Figure 2, top. Estimated gravitational wave strain amplitude of GW150914 projected onto H1. This shows the full bandwidth of the waveform without the filtering used. Figure 1, the inset image show numerical relativity models of the black hole horizon as the black holes coalesce. Bottom, the Keplerian effective black hole separation in units of Schwarzschild radii, R sub s equals 2 gm over c squared, and the effective relative velocity given by the post-Newtonian parameter v over c equals g times m times pi times f over c squared, the power of 1/3, where f is the gravitational wave frequency calculated with the numerical relativity and m is the total of mass, volume from table 1, and this is provided by Abbott and others. All right, quick recap on what we just read here. So he's saying that all black holes are solutions to corresponding parts of Einstein's nonlinear field equations, right? And that the gravitational waves that these black holes would allegedly produce come from linearizing the nonlinear field equations, and also, and not just that, but combining them with a deliberate set of coordinates that make it that align with the speed of light and the presupposed speed of light in a vacuum. So now these two things, um, will kind of reify each other, very circular in that way. And he goes on to state how because of the nonlinear nature of Einstein's theory, if you were to try and combine things that were linearized, which is what they're calling superposition, it wouldn't hold. It wouldn't work. Even though that they are two, that a black hole universe and a Big Bang universe are two universes, they're two separate entities derived from two different ways of solving Einstein's field equations, and therefore they have nothing to do with each other. They're strictly mathematical concepts. And then he goes on to detail, what makes up a black hole universe and what makes up a Big Bang universe. And you can see the inconsistencies here. A Big Bang, or I mean, a black hole universe is infinite, spatially infinite, and it's eternal, contains only one mass itself. Um, and then this asymptotically flattened curve thing, this is a condition that they impose on the math that results in creating the big a black hole. This produces the air, this asymptotically flat or asymptotically curved condition. So if you don't do that, you know, in a Big Bang universe, you can add as many bodies as you want. Um, you can have things like radiation and masses and things, but again, not gravity radiation because derived from a different field equation. So I think that was the major touching points on this. Yeah, so he goes down. He just says basically, they know that that you can't do this, that superpositioning doesn't work, because you're combining the nonlinear and linear equation solutions together, and they do it anyway. And this is the model that they, say that gravity wave would look like if this thing existed and this thing existed, and then they did a little dance and merged, right, and then formed the final black hole. This is what all that would look like in wavelengths. And then I'm going to skip ahead here because I feel like this should have been number 3 because it kind of further elaborates on the black hole, like what a black hole universe is. So I'm just going to start reading from this, and then we'll come back to number 3, do it out of order. I feel like it'll make this more coherent. Okay, so number 4, black hole is a universe. Each and every black hole is an independent universe by its very definition. No less than the Big Bang universes are independent universes because the black hole universe is not contained within its event horizon. Excuse me. Its space-time extends indefinitely far from its singularity. All types of black hole universes are spatially infinite and eternal and are either asymptotically flat or, in more esoteric cases, asymptotically curved. There is no bound on asymptotic, for otherwise it would not be asymptotic. Thus, every type of black hole constitutes an independent, finite, infinite, and eternal universe, bearing in mind that each different type of black hole universe pertains to a different set of Einstein's field equations, therefore have nothing to do with one another. Without the asymptotic condition, black hole equations do not result. Or I'm sorry, black hole equations do not result. And one can write as many non-asymptotic solutions to the corresponding Einstein field equations for the supposed different types of black holes as one pleases, none of which will produce a black hole. And we have a quote here. Quote, black holes were first discovered as purely mathematic solutions of Einstein's field equations. This solution, the Schwarzschild black hole, is a nonlinear solution uh, of the Einstein equations of general relativity. It contains no matter and exists forever in asymptotically flat space-time. End quote. Dictionary of Geophysics, Astrophysics, and Astronomy. Another quote. Quote, the Kerr-Newman solutions are explicitly asymptotically flat stationary solutions to the Einstein-Maxwell equation, lambda equals 0, involving just three free parameters, m, a, and e, and the mass as measured asymptotically is the parameter m in gravitational units. The solution also possesses angular momentum of magnitude am. Finally, the charge is given by E. When A equals E equals 0, we get the Schwarzschild radius or Schwarzschild solution. End quote. And that's from Penrose. And then we have one more quote. Quote: the charged Kerr metric. The charged Kerr metrics are all stationary and axisymmetric. They are asymptotically flat. End quote. Wald. All right, so quick recap on all this to tie it back together here. This asymptotic condition. So these conditions are things that they're adding to Einstein's field equations when they're solving it, and it's producing this infinite curvature collapsing stuff, right? So that's what all that means. All right, circling back to number 3 here. I just wanted to read that. I read that out of order because I felt that it made this first point more coherent about the differences in the universes of Big Bang universes and black hole universes. So, continuing on, 3. Gravitational wave propagation speed. The LIGO Virgo collaborations opened the introduction to their paper with the following. In 1916, the year after the final formulation of the field equations of general relativity, Albert Einstein predicted the existence of gravitational waves. He found that the linearized weak field equations have wave solutions. Transverse waves of spatial strain that travel at the speed of light generated by time variations of the mass quadrupole moment of the source. End quote. Abbott and others. The impression given here that the speed of propagation of Einstein's gravitational waves is uniquely that of the speed of light in a vacuum is false. Propagation speed of Einstein's gravitational waves is arbitrary because it is coordinate dependent. That Einstein's waves seem to travel uniquely the speed of light in a vacuum is simply because that speed was deliberately selected in order to conform to the presupposition. The method employed to determine the wave equation for Einstein's gravitational waves is the weak field linearization of his field equations and the concomitant selection of a specific set of coordinates. Maxwell's electromagnetic theory predicts sinusoidal electromagnetic wave propagation in a vacuum at the speed v given by this equation here. And we'll look at this in a second. I've got trying to illustrate what exactly he's talking about. The speed of light changes according to the permittivity and the permeability of the dielectric medium in which it travels. Then he gives the equation for how you calculate that. And then wherein K and K sub m are the dielectric constants and relative permeability respective to the medium. Note that the speed of the electromagnetic wave propagation in a vacuum is not arbitrary. Since the speed of light in a vacuum plays a central role in Einstein's theory of relativity, the motive for choosing the coordinates to make the gravitational waves emerging from the linearization game travel at the speed of light in a vacuum is abundantly clear. Appendix A presents the mathematical means of linearization of Einstein's field equations, revealing the arbitrary nature of the speed or of his speed of gravitational waves. And to give a quick recap right here, so this KKM thing right here that exists in this equation, this is where you would put in your values for the medium in which light's traveling through so that the speed can change, right? Because it doesn't just equal C, right? It equals C over the square root of the medium that it's traveling in. And then for the electromagnetic wave propagation, that's not the case. The wave travels at the speed in a vacuum, and that's equal to C straight up. No further adjustments or constants needed to adjust the speed to make it arbitrary. Right? And oh yeah, so we'll go down to Appendix A real quick. All right, so coming down to Appendix A here, Einstein's gravitational waves are extracted from his linearization of his nonlinear field equations. According to this metric tensor written as G sub Greek letters equals Greek letters sub Greek letters plus H sub Greek sub Greek letters. So I'm not going to read through this part because I don't know how to pronounce all the math stuff, so the sentences will just be kind of broken. But he goes through here and he reduces the equations down and shows if you change the constant speed of light, that it doesn't matter. Like whatever constants you put in, that will be the speed at which the wave propagates at. So it's not like the Maxwell equation where the speed is not arbitrary. It just that's what it is. However, the crucial point of foregoing mathematical development is that Einstein's gravitational waves do not have a unique speed of propagation. The speed of its waves is coordinate dependent as the condition at equation A6 attests. It is the constraint at equation A6 that selects a set of coordinates to produce the propagation speed. A different set of coordinates yields a different speed of propagation, as equation A3 does not have to be constrained by equation A6. Einstein deliberately chose a set of coordinates that yields the desired speed of propagation at that of light in a vacuum. In order to satisfy the presupposition that propagation speed is at c, there is no a priori reason why this particular set of coordinates is better than any other. The sole purpose for this choice is to obtain the desired presupposed result. All the coordinate systems differ from Galilean coordinates by small quantities of the first order. Potentials G sub Greek letters pertain not only to the gravitational influence which has objective reality, but also to the coordinate system which we select arbitrarily. We can propagate coordinate changes with the speed of thought, and these may be mixed up at will with the more dilatory propagation discussed above. There does not seem to be any way of distinguishing a physical and a conventional part of these changes of G sub Greek letters. The statement that in the relativity theory gravitational waves are propagated with the speed of light has I believe been entirely based upon the foregoing investigation, but will be seen that it is only true in a very conventional sense. If the coordinates are chosen to satisfy a certain condition which has no clear geometrical importance, the speed is that of light. If the coordinates are slightly different, the speed is altogether different from that of light. The result stands or falls based on the choice of coordinate system, and so far as can be judged. The coordinates here used were purposely introduced in order to obtain a simplification which results from representing the propagation as occurring with the speed of light. Argument thus follows a vicious circle. End quote, Eddington. 5. Black hole gravity. Cosmology maintains that the finite mass of a black hole is concentrated at its singularity, where the volume is zero, density is infinite, and space-time curvature is infinite. There are two types of black hole singularity proposed by cosmologists, according to whether or not the black hole is rotating. In the case of no rotation, the singularity is a point. In the case of rotation, the singularity is the circumference of a circle. Cosmologists call them physical singularities. These and other mathematical singularities of black hole equations are reified so as to contain the mass of the black holes and to locate their event horizons. Singularities are actually only in an equation where the equation is undefined, owing, for example, to a division by zero. Although they have been construed as such by cosmology, singularities are not in fact physical entities. A singularity also occurs in Newton's theory. It's called the center of gravity. The center of gravity of a body is not a physical object, rather a mathematical artifice. There are forces in general relativity, but gravity is not one of them because it is space-time curvature. It immediately follows that according to cosmology, gravity is infinite at a black hole singularity. Infinities of density, space-time curvature, and gravity claim to all be physically real. Quote, The work that Roger Penrose and I did between 1965 and 1970 showed that according to general relativity, there must be a singularity of infinite density within the black hole. End quote, Stephen Hawking. Quote, once a body of matter of any size, mass, m, lies inside Schwarzschild radius, 2m, it undergoes gravitational collapse, and the singularity becomes physical, not a limiting fiction. End quote. That's from Dotson and Poston. Quote, a non-rotating black hole is a particularly simple structure. At the center is its singularity, a point of zero volume and infinite density, where all of the black hole's mass is located. Space-time is infinitely curved at the singularity. Black hole's singularity is a real entity and not a mathematical artifact. End quote. Carroll and Ostley. Quote, as R decreases, the space-time curvature mounts in proportion to R to the power of -3, becoming theoretically infinite at R equals 0, end quote, Penrose. Quote, one says that R equals 0 is a physical singularity of space-time, end quote, Spencer, Thorne, and Wheeler. However, no finite mass possesses zero volume, infinite density, or infinite gravity anywhere. All right, so quick recap of what we just read here. We read that there's two types of singularities, and they're produced by two different types of black holes. And if we remember back, um, different types of black holes are all derived from solving Einstein's field equations, with different methods, and they're not related in any way. So there's that, and in Newton's theory, there's quote unquote singularities, but they don't consider those black holes because they understood in that time that it was just a mathematical concept. It wasn't real, and that's what Einstein said to Schwarzschild when Schwarzschild allegedly presented him with the Schwarzschild radius, and he was like, "Well, relax, dude. It's just math." Now they've taken these mathematical concepts and given them physicality in the real world by saying that they've detected these waves and these predicted models have come out of these equations, and then they've predicted them they've detected these predictions in physical reality. So therefore these black holes and things must exist. And this dude's basically saying, you know, all these people are so fucking confused because they're all describing things that don't exist in reality. And he really bangs it out here at the end after he quotes five of these dudes that all are saying that it's real, it has physicality, this is all their scientific understanding. And then he just points out, however, no finite mass possesses zero volume, infinite density, or infinite gravity anywhere. So that's a GG to any of this, because we're always like, hey, where's the fractal example of that? Hey, where's the can you show me, this happening in nature, that sort of thing. There's no finite mass that possesses zero volume, infinite. Like, this is all in a math equation. We'll continue on. 6. Mathematical theory of black holes. LIGO-Virgo collaboration have invoked a binary black hole system merging to cause emissions of their reported gravitational waves. Quote, basic features of GW150914 point to it being produced by the coalescence of two black holes, i.e. their orbital in-spiral and merger and subsequent final black hole ring-down over 0.2 seconds. Signal increase in frequency and amplitude in about 8 cycles from 35 to 150 hertz, where the amplitude reaches a maximum. Most plausible explanation for this evolution is the in-spiral of two orbiting masses, M sub 1 and M sub 2, due to their gravitational wave emissions. End quote, Abbott and others. In their introduction of their paper, the LIGO-Virgo collaborations incorrectly attribute the black hole to Carl Schwarzschild. Quote, also in 1916, Schwarzschild published a solution for the field equations that were later understood to describe a black hole, and in 1963, Kerr generalized the solutions to a rotating black hole. End quote, Abbott and others. The resultant black hole type is identified in, quote, a pair of neutron stars, while compact, would not have required mass, while a black hole neutron star binary with the reduced chirp mass would have a very large total mass and would thus merge at lower frequencies. This leaves black holes as the only known objects compact enough to reach an orbital frequency of 75 Hz without contact. Furthermore, the decay in the waveform after it peaks is consistent with the dampened oscillations of a black hole relaxing to its final stationary Kerr configuration. End quote, Abbott and others. All the black holes are identified in Figure 8. Sorry, quote, in the following quote. Quote, here we perform several studies of GW 150914 aimed at detecting deviations from the prediction of general relativity within the limits set by LIGO sensitivity and the nature of GW 150914. We find no statistical significance evidence against the hypothesis that indeed GW 150914 was emitted by a binary system composed of two black holes, i.e., by Schwarzschild or Kerr general relativity solutions. That the binary evolved dynamically toward merger, and that it formed a merged rotating black hole consistent with general relativity solutions. Quote, Abbott and others. Note that the invalid superposition of the two Schwarzschild or Kerr black holes due to a violation in their asymptotic flatness each encounters infinite space-time curvature, i.e., infinite gravity, at the singularity of one of the other. Kerr configuration subsumes the Schwarzschild configuration and so depends upon the existence of the latter. The Schwarzschild solution has no physical meaning because it is a solution to a set of physically meaningless equations. See section 7 below. Furthermore, all black hole equations are obtained by the violations of the rules of pure mathematics, as will now be proven. Einstein's field equations, in the absence of matter, are R sub Greek letters equals 0. And this is important later because he uses this to cancel things out. And if we remember, matter and space-time are the same. I don't know if we've covered that yet, but I've read this a bunch of times and re-recorded this. But that's the significance of this, so we'll come back to that. Hopefully I remember. Consider Schwarzschild's actual solution to equation 6.1, which is not the solution that has been assigned to him by a cosmologist, and then they give an equation here, 6.2. Here, Greek letter is a positive real value constant, and r equals the square root of x to the power of 2 plus y to the power of 2 plus z to the power of 2. The speed of light in a vacuum is set to unity, and equation 6.2 is singular, i.e. undefined, only at r equals 0, i.e. when x equals y equals z equals 0. Contrast this with the so-called Schwarzschild solution attributed to Schwarzschild, but is actually due to the German mathematician D. Hilbert. They give Hilbert's equation here at 6.3. Here, C equals 1, Newton's gravitational constant, G equals 1, and M is claimed to be the mass that is produced by the gravitational field described by equation 6.3 for a universe according to Einstein's field equations. R sub Greek letters equals 0. Note that prima facie is singular and undefined at r equals 2m and at r equals 0. Equation 6.2 and equation 6.3 not equivalent owing to 0 being greater than r. Or I'm sorry, r being greater than 0. In equation 6.3, if they are equivalent in 6.2, then it must be that this equation here, equation 6.3, is somewhat deceptive. Rewriting it explicitly with C and G is more informative. Rewrites the equation here so we can see it in all its glory. In equation 6.3, so-called Schwarzschild radius is r sub s equals 2m. From equation 6.3b, Schwarzschild radius r sub s is easily identified in full. Quote, This value is known as the Schwarzschild radius in terms of the mass and the object that the source. In terms of the mass of the object that is the source of the gravitational field it is given by. That's R sub s equals 2 gm over c squared. For ordinary stars, the Schwarzschild radius lies buried deep in the stellar interior. Quote, the canon. Quote, remarkably as well, or remarkably as we shall see, this is exactly the modern formula of the radius of a black hole in general relativity, end quote, Schutz. According to cosmologists, the Schwarzschild radius or gravitational radius is the radius of the event horizon of a black hole. The R is incorrectly treated here as the radius by cosmologists is most clearly evident by the very Schwarzschild radius, which for stars lies buried deep in their stellar interior. Schwarzschild quote, the Schwarzschild radius for Earth is about 1 centimeter, and that the sun is 3 kilometers, end quote, D Inverno. So this dude's saying if you shrink the Earth down to the size at its current size, if you shrink it down to 1 centimeter, it the density at the center of it will become that'll be the black hole that'll curve space time infinitely and all that. And then for the sun, if you take the sun, which is they say is 865,000 miles across, if you squish that down to 3 miles, then that becomes a black hole. So when they say that the radius lies within the mass of the object or whatever, he's saying that this radius thing isn't even the radius. It's a oh yeah, when there's no matter, this is what they say, right? 0. But they're taking this R as a radius for when something shrinks. I guess that's what he's saying. So anyway, got where we left off here. I think we were switched. Yeah, okay. The Inverno. For example, a Schwarzschild black hole of a mass equal to that of the Earth. Yeah, so they're just reiterating the size when you shrink it down again, and then they do the same thing in this quote. In Hilbert's solution, cosmologists call R equals R sub s a coordinate or apparent singularity, and R equals 0 a physical singularity. And remember, R equals 0 or whatever was them removing matter from the equation, and also in turn removing the gravitational field, because without matter there's no gravity field. Without the gravity field, there's no matter, according to because it is endowed with fantastic physical properties. Let R apostrophe be the radius of a Euclidean sphere. It is routinely claimed for equation 6.3 that equation 6.3b R equals R apostrophe equals the square root of x to the power of 2 plus y to the power of 2 plus z to the power of 2, which form the black hole from which the black hole was constructed. This is incorrect here because then he has lays that out. It says, notwithstanding, R is neither the radius nor the distance of any black hole equation, a mathematical fact which subverts the entire theory of black holes. The reader is referred to for all the mathematical details, which I only summarize herein. Geometrically speaking, equation 6.4 means that black holes is a result of unwittingly moving a sphere initially centered in the origin of coordinates to another place, but leaving behind its center. Analytically speaking, this is revealed by, and then he has an equation here that shows what that is. Continuing on with another equation, that's a really cool R. This radius is R sub p and then he has another equation. Note that R sub p parentheses R sub 0 in parentheses equals A upside down A R sub 0 upside down A N. So, noted. The constants R sub 0 and N are arbitrary. Setting R sub 0 equals N, or I'm sorry, setting R sub 0 equals 0, N equals 3, R sub 0 greater than R yields Schwarzschild's actual solution. Setting the same equation but slightly different, changing the N3 to an N3 to N1 yields the Brillouin solution. Changing another variable again, produces another solution. Hilbert's solution is not an element of the infinite equivalence class. Note that Hilbert's solution is an alleged extension of Drosti's solution. Owing to equivalence, if any element of the infinite equivalence class cannot be extended, then none can be extended, owing to equivalence. It is immediately apparent that none can be extended because R minus R sub 0, and then, this is amplified by the case R sub 0 equals 0, N equals 2, which in case equation 6.5 is defined for all real values all real values R except R equals R sub 0 equals 0. In this case, the black hole requires that. Then it has an equation. Thus, the Schwarzschild black hole is invalid because it violates the rules of pure mathematics. It requires the square of a real number to be less than 0. It is a violation of the rules of pure mathematics, or it is the same violation of the rules of pure mathematics that produces all black hole universes. All the purported means of extending Gortzy's solution to Hilbert are consequently invalid. The Kerr-Newman solution adds charge and angular momentum to the Schwarzschild radius. The infinite equivalent class for Kerr-Newman spacetime is given by, and he has a lengthy equation here. Then he ends it with saying, no black hole is possible without a violation of the rules of pure mathematics. As the case, R sub 0 equals 0, N equals 2 amplifies. All right, man. So what he's saying here is it's all a bunch of gobbledygook. To summarize all that in the math equations, he goes into detail to show the violation of pure mathematics, where they've squared a number, a real number, and the result is less than 0, right? They squared a positive number and it turned out to be negative, so they've violated pure mathematics to get these black holes, and this is how all black holes are done. When they square this shit and it comes out negative, and they're like, oh, it must be, that's where space curves in infinitely and all that. That's where that comes from. Them doing the math wrong, them violating the rules of pure mathematics. So remember when they're all like, oh, the math checks out, math is reality. We don't need to define what this is because the math. Well, they can make math say anything, and this is the smoking gun for that. 7. The paradox of black hole mass. Although one violation of the rules of pure mathematics is sufficient to invalidate it, black hole violates other rules of logic. Einstein maintains that although equation 6.1 contains no terms for material sources, since T sub Greek letters equals 0, a material source is nonetheless present in order to cause a gravitational field. The material source is rendered present linguistically by the assertion that equation 6.1 describes the gravitational field outside of a body such as a star. Indeed, concerning Hilbert's solution, Einstein writes his own equation, then the equation here, referred to as 109A. He references back to this. M denotes the sun's mass centrally symmetrically placed about the origins of the coordinate system. The solution, 109A, is valid only outside this mass, where all the T sub-Greek letters vanish. Excuse me. Note that Einstein has incorrectly asserted, in the standard fashion of cosmologists, that his mass, m, in his equation 109a is centrally and symmetrically placed about the origin of coordinates. Einstein's field equations, and he has a quote here. Quote, couple the gravitational field, parentheses, containing in the curvature of space-time with its source. End quote. Foster and Nightingale. On the one hand, Einstein removes all material sources by setting t sub-Greek letters to zero, or equals zero, and on the other hand, immediately reinstates the presence of a massive source with words by alluding to a mass outside of which equations r sub-Greek letters equals zero apply. Since his gravitational field must be caused by matter. According to Einstein, his equation 109a contains a massive source at the quote-unquote origin. Yet also according to Einstein, equation 6.1, from which equation 109 is obtained, contains no material source. This contradiction is readily amplified that equation 6.1 contains no material source whatsoever. Is easily reaffirmed by the field equations r sub-Greek letters equals lambda g sub-Greek letters. Constant lambda is the so-called cosmological constant. The solution for equation 7.1 is de Sitter's empty universe, which is empty precisely because the energy momentum tensor for material source is zero, i.e. t sub-Greek letters equals zero. De Sitter's universe contains no matter. Then he has quotes here from other cosmologists to support this. Quote, this is not a model of a relativistic universe because it's devoid of matter, and quote, de Inverno, quote, the de Sitter line element corresponds to a model which must strictly be taken as completely empty, end quote, Tolman. Quote, the solution of an entirely empty world, end quote, Eddington. Quote, there is no matter at all, exclamation point, end quote, Weinberg. He was super excited about it. Note that in equation 6.1 and equation 7.1, p sub-Greek letters equals zero. Thus, according to Einstein and cosmologists, material sources are both present and absent by the very same mathematical constraint, which is a violation of the rules of logic. Since de Sitter's universe is devoid of material sources by virtue of t sub-Greek letters equals zero, the Schwarzschild solution must also be devoid of material sources by the very same constraint. Thus, equation 6.1 contains no matter, and and its solution is physically meaningless. But it is upon 6.1 that black hole theory entirely relies. E.g. So to recap, we come back to equation 6.1 and we read Einstein's field equation in absence of matter r sub-Greek letters equals zero. So remember, when there's no matter, there's no gravitational field, there's no gravitational waves. There's no matter. This is what this looks like, right? No matter. So when we scroll down to this part where he was talking about how his equation, Einstein's equation, 109a, is derived from the example given in 6.1, which is your r Greek letters equals zero. So this is a no mass universe, no gravity field universe. But he invokes these to keep it going. And then so this guy further says, takes it a step further and says, thus equation 6.1 contains no matter and its solution is physically meaningless. But it is upon 6.1 that the black hole theory is entirely rest, because remember, this is where this canceling out of matter or whatever, this is where they get their radius for their black holes and stuff. So in that part of the equation is it's nothing. It means there's nothing, but they've made it into something else. 8. Localization of gravitational energy and conservation laws. Without the theoretical framework by which the usual conservation laws for energy and momentum of a closed system hold, it as determined by a vast array of experiments, there is no means to produce gravitational waves by general relativity. Einstein was aware of this, so he devised a means for his theory to satisfy the usual conservation of energy and momentum for a closed system. However, Einstein's method of solving this problem is invalid because he violated the rules of pure mathematics. There is, in fact, no means by which the usual conservation laws can be satisfied by general relativity. Consequently, the concept of general relativity, consequently, the concept of gravitational waves has no valid theoretical basis in Einstein's theory. It must be first noted that when Einstein talks of the conservation of energy and momentum, he means that the sum of the energy and momentum of his gravitational field and its matter and its material source is conserved in tutu in the usual way for a closed system, as experiments attest for. Otherwise, his theory is in conflict with these experiments and therefore invalid. Quote, it must be remembered that besides the energy density of matter, there must be also given an energy density of the gravitational field so that there can be no talk of principles of conservation of energy and momentum of matter alone, end quote, Einstein. The meaning of Einstein's matter needs to be clarified. So we're going to clarify here. Quote, we make the distinction hereafter between gravitational field and matter in this way that we denote everything but the gravitational field as matter. Our use of the word, therefore, includes not only matter in the ordinary sense, but the electromagnetic field as well, end quote, Einstein. The energy momentum of Einstein's matter alone is contained in his energy momentum tensor, T sub Greek letters. To account for the energy momentum of his gravitational field alone introduced by his pseudo tensor, lowercase t sub Greek letters, defined by Einstein. And he has his equation here, 8.1, where he's got all this written out apparently. Where k is the constant and this other Greek letter to the power of a Greek letter, sub Greek letter, is the Kronecker delta. All right. The quantities of lowercase t power of a Greek letter, sub Greek letter, we call energy components of the gravitational field, end quote. That's from Einstein. But lowercase t power of Greek letter, sub Greek letter, is not a tensor. As such, it is a coordinate-dependent quantity contrary to the basic coordinate-independent tenet of general relativity. Quote, it is to be noted that lowercase t to the power of a Greek letter, sub-Greek letter, is not a tensor, end quote, Einstein. The justification is that lowercase t power Greek letter, sub-Greek letter, acts like a tensor under linear transformations of coordinates. When subjected to a certain strict condition, Einstein then takes the ordinary divergence, and he shows the equation for that, figure 8.2, and claims a conservation law for energy and momentum of his gravitational field alone. Right? This equation expresses, quote, this equation expresses the law of conservation of momentum and of energy for the gravitational field, end quote, Einstein. Einstein and his pseudo-tensor for his gravitational field alone to his energy and momentum tensor for matter alone to obtain the total energy momentum equation for his gravitational field and its material sources. So we have E equals lowercase t to the power of a Greek letter, sub-Greek letter, plus uppercase t to the power of a Greek letter, sub-Greek letter. Note, being a tensor equation, Einstein cannot take a tensor divergence, therefore he takes an ordinary divergence. So then we do that divergence equation again. That's in figure 8.4, and it equals out to 0, I guess. And claims the usual conservation laws of energy and momentum for a closed system. Quote, thus it results from our field equation of gravitational Quote, thus it results from our field equations of gravitation, oh my God, I'm retarded. Quote, thus results from our field equations of gravitation that the laws of conservation of momentum and energy are satisfied. Here, instead, the energy component lowercase t to the power of a Greek letter, sub-Greek letter of the gravitational field, we have we have to introduce we have introduced totality of the energy components of matter and the gravitational field. End quote, Einstein. Mathematical error here is profound but completely unknown to cosmologists. Contract Einstein's pseudotensor by setting Greek letter to equal another Greek letter to yield the invariant lowercase t equals lowercase t to the power of a Greek letter, sub-Greek letter, comma. Thus, comma, another equation, figure 8.5. Since the more Greek letters are functions only of the components of the metric tensor and their first derivatives, t, it is seen to be the first order intrinsic differential invariant, i.e., it is an invariant that depends solely upon the component of the metric tensor and their first derivatives. However, the pure mathematicians proved in 1900 that the first order intrinsic differential variants do not exist. Thus, by reductio ad absurdum, Einstein's pseudotensor is a meaningless collection of mathematical symbols. Contrary to Einstein and cosmologists, it cannot therefore be used to represent anything in physics or to make any calculations, including those for energy of Einstein's gravitational waves. Nonetheless, cosmology calculates. Quote, it is not possible to obtain an expression for the energy of the gravitational field satisfying both conditions. Condition 1, when added to other forms of energy, the total energy is conserved. And condition 2, energy within a uh, definite region at a certain time is independent of the coordinate system. Thus, in general, gravitational energy cannot be localized. The best we can do is use a pseudotensor which satisfies the condition for 1, but not for the condition of 2. It gives us an approximation, and it gives us an approximate information about gravitational energy, which in some special cases can be accurate. End quote, Dirac. Quote, let us consider the energy of these waves. Owing to the pseudotensor not being a real tensor, we do not get, in general, a clear result independent of the coordinate system. But there is one special case in which we do get a clear result, namely when the waves are all moving in the same direction, end quote, Dirac. Consider the following two equivalent forms of Einstein's field equations. And we got the equation here in figure 8.6, and figure 8.7 is another equation. By equation 8.6, according to Einstein, if capital T to the power of a Greek letter sub v equals 0, then r to the power of a Greek letter sub v equals 0. But by equation 8.7, if r to the power of a Greek letter sub v equals 0, then capital T to the power of a Greek letter sub v equals 0. In other words, r to the power of a Greek letter v and t, the power of a Greek letter sub v, must vanish identically if either is 0. Then so is the other, and the field equations reduce to the identity of 0 equals 0. Hence, if there are no material sources, i.e., capital T to the power of a Greek letter v equals 0, then there is no gravitational field and no universe. Bearing this in mind, equation 8.3 and 8.4, consideration the conservation of momentum of energy and momentum and the tensor relations, Einstein's field equations must take the following form, and he rewrites it here to where it equals 0, and then he rewrites it again. That's figure 8.8. Comparing this to equation 8.3, it is clear that when g to the power of a Greek letter sub v over k actually constitutes the energy momentum components of Einstein's gravitational field, which is rather natural since Einstein's tensor g to the power of a Greek letter sub v describes the curvature of Einstein's spacetime, i.e., his gravitational field, in equation 8.8 also constitutes the total energy momentum equation for Einstein's gravitational field and its sources are combined. Quote, space as opposed to what fills space, which is dependent on the coordinates, has no separate existence, and quote, Einstein, quote, I wish to show that space-time is not necessarily something to which one can ascribe a separate existence independent of the actual objects in physical reality, end quote, Einstein. Unlike equation 8.3, equation 8.8 is a tensor equation. The tensor divergence of the left side of the equation in 8.8 is 0, therefore constitutes the uh, uh, conservation law for Einstein's gravitational field and its material source. However, the total energy momentum by Einstein, however, the total energy momentum by equation 8.8 is always 0. The g to the Greek letter to the power of a Greek letter sub v over k, and the t power Greek letter v sub v must vanish identically because space-time has no separate existence in general relativity, and hence gravitational energy cannot be localized, i.e., there is no possibility of gravitational waves. Moreover, since the total energy momentum is always 0, the usual conservation laws and momentum for a closed system cannot be satisfied. And general relativity is therefore in conflict with a vast array of experiments on a fundamental level. The so-called cosmological constant can be easily included as follows. And he writes the equation out where he includes lambda in equation example 8.9. In this case, the energy momentum components of Einstein's gravitational field are the g. Yeah, I'm not going to read that. So equation over k, when g, equation, or t is 0, all must vanish identically, and all the same consequences ensue, just as for equation 8.8. Thus, again, if there is no material source, there is no gravitational field, there is no universe, and Einstein's field equations violate the usual conservation of energy and momentum for a closed system. The so-called dark energy is attributed to lambda by cosmologists. Dark energy is a mysterious aether ad arbitrarium because, according to Einstein, lambda is not a material source for a gravitational field, but is vaguely implicated by him in his gravitational field. Quote, by introducing into Hamilton's principle, instead of the scalar of Riemann's tensor, this scalar increased by a universal constant. End quote, Einstein. Cosmological constant, however, falls afoul of de Sitters' empty universe, which possesses space-time curvature but contains no matter and is therefore physically meaningless. By equation 8.9, if lambda g, the power of a Greek letter sub v, is to be permitted for the sake of argument, then it must take part of the energy momentum of the gravitational field, which necessarily vanishes when t equals uh, Greek letter sub v to 0. Recall that according to Einstein, everything except his gravitational field is matter, and that the matter is the cause of his gravitational field. This insinuation of lambda can be more readily seen by writing the equation 8.9 as follows, and then he writes the equation out in 8.9.b. Einstein's scalar increase by a universal constant is clearly evident. It is the term. Second. It is the term math equation here. Hence Einstein's field equations in the absence of matter are sub Greek letter sub Greek letter v equals 0. Once again, have no physical meaning, and the Schwarzschild radius too has no physical meaning, despite the putative observational verifications. Consequently, the theories of black holes and gravitational waves are invalid. Okay, so we're going to recap now on what we just read. It's kind of above my pay grade, so I'm just kind of going with what I could figure out here, rereading it until my eyes hurt. So he introduces this pseudo tensor to account for the energy and momentum of his gravitational field, right? Now, keep in mind it's not a real tensor or blah blah blah, so he can't do the math as if it is. So what he does is he inserts that, and then he does an ordinary divergence where he zeroes it out, and then the guy says that this is a profound mistake, um, because if you contract his pseudo tensor, you will get a first order intrinsic differential invariant, which apparently doesn't exist. However, when pure mathematicians proved in 1900 that first order intrinsic differential invariants do not exist, thus by reductio ad absurdum, Einstein's pseudo tensor is a meaningless collection of mathematical symbols, right? So that's kind of what all that means. And then this guy actually wrote another paper kind of elaborating on this, and we'll read that real quick. So in an attempt to make the general theory of relativity comply with the usual conservation and energy and momentum of a closed system, which a vast array of experiments have ascertained, Einstein constructed an ad hoc pseudo tensor to his equations, and in doing that is outside of the mathematical structure of his theory, which violates the rules of pure mathematics and is therefore meaningless. And he goes on to say that despite all this, everyone just continues on role playing and doing the math um, as if this actually accounts for anything and is calculable to anything real. And then, so in closing thoughts here, he says general relativity cannot localize its alleged gravitational energy, so Einstein's gravitational waves do not exist. This is the more so since Einstein's claim that form invariance of the theorem of Pythagoras under Lorentz transformation is form invariance of his expanding spherical light wave is false. Under under Lorentz transformation, the spherical light wave is expanding translated ellipsoid light or wave of light with a non-static center. Consequently, the ideological and occult theory of relativity is logically inconsistent and therefore false. So this guy's really got a big problem with all that. So hopefully that kind of explains that, and hopefully I can get some more intel on this later. Number 9, numerically relativity and perturbations. Numerical analysis of merging black holes and perturbation of black holes are ill-posed procedures for the simple fact that such mathematical means cannot validate a demonstrable fallacy. Similarly, no amount of observations and experiments can legitimize entities that are products of violations of the rules of pure mathematics and logic, since the premises are false and the conclusions drawn from them inconsistent with them. Such numerical and perturbation procedures are consequently of no scientific merit. Nonetheless, LIGO Virgo collaborations have stated, quote, the signal sweeps upward in a frequency from 35 to 250 hertz with a peak gravitational wave strain of 1.0 to 10 to the negative 21. It matches the waveform predicted by general relativity for the end spiral and merger of a pair of black holes in the ring down of the resulting single black hole. Quote, it fits to numerical simulations of binary black hole mergers. We provide estimates of the mass and spin of the final black hole and the total energy radiated in gravitational waves and the peak gravitational wave luminosity, end quote, Abbott and others. Quote, several analyses have been performed to determine whether or not GW150914 is consistent with a binary black hole system in general relativity. A first consistency check involves the mass and spin of the final black hole. In general relativity, the end product of a black hole binary coalescence is a Kerr black hole, which is fully described by its mass and spin. For quasi-circular end spirals, These are predicted uniquely by Einstein's equations as a function of the mass and spin of two cognator black holes using fitting formulas calibrated to numerical relativity simulations. We verify that the remnant mass of and spin deduced from the early stages of the coalescence and those inferred independently from the late stage are consistent with each other with no evidence for disagreement from general relativity. Abbott and or end quote Abbott and others. The signal from GW150914 was extracted from a database containing tens of thousands of numerically determined waves generated on false assumptions that black holes and gravitation of the existence of black holes and gravitational waves. A generic signal, CGW, was initially reported by LIGO after a powerful computer extracted a generic signal. CGW was initially reported by LIGO after which powerful computers extracted GW150914 from the waveform database for a best fit element. Quote, the initial detection was made by low frequency searches for generic gravitational wave transients and was reported within 3 minutes of data acquisition. Subsequently matched filters analysis of relativistic models of compact binary waveforms recovered GW15091 or 914 as the most significant event from each detector for the observations reported here. End quote. Abbott and others. With such powerful computing resources and so many degrees of freedom, it is possible to best fit just about any LIGO instability with an element of its numerically determined waveform database. This is indeed the outcome of the LIGO-Virgo collaborations. They have managed to best fit a numerically determined waveform for into entities that not only do not exist, but are not even consistent with relativity itself. This amplifies the futility of applying numerical and perturbation methods to ill-posed problems. There are no known Einstein field equations for two or more masses, and hence no known solutions here too, or there too. There is no existence theorem by which it can even be asserted that Einstein's field equations contain latent capability for describing configurations of two or more masses. General relativity cannot account for the simple experimental fact that two or more fixed suspended masses approach one another upon release. It is for precisely these reasons that all Big Bang models treat the universe as a single mass, an ideal indivisible fluid of uniform macroscopic density and pressure that permeates the entire universe. All right, going over what we just read, we can see that this dude's like, okay, so they've come up, they've superimposed these things together and come up with a which they're not supposed to do because you can't get any discernible information from linearizing nonlinear field equations. But nonetheless, they do it anyway, and they've come up with a database of what these possible gravitational waves would look like. And, surprise, they found one with all their computing power and simulations and stuff. I mean, this guy basically is saying the same shit we're saying, that all this stuff comes out of a computer, and that when you have unlimited money and resources, you can find whatever you're looking for in in that simulation. And he says it's not even worth looking into the data because it's so theoretical that it's and the things that the gravitational wave would allegedly come from are completely theoretical and debunked on the face of them because they're done from doing the math wrong. Right? Math is reality. Well, they've made up their own equations that are incorrect, and this guy goes through and shows why they're all wrong, and yet cosmologists still calculate. And yeah, so this part too I thought was really interesting because this kind of goes in line with what Austin was saying in his ether presentation about a background medium. So the way that they calculate all this shit is it's precisely for this reason that all Big Bang models treat the universe as a single mass, an ideal indivisible fluid of uniform macroscopic density and pressure that permeates the entire universe. What I think he's saying there is that the way the Big Bang, or the way that they um, calculate the fields in the Big Bang model when they're doing nonlinear equations, I guess. Um, they're saying that the entire gravity field is one thing, and that you know pressure mediation within that field by the masses that are in the field, that's what's creating the curvature and the of space time and all that shit. But it's all one thing. It's not like each thing has its own individual gravity wave or field. Is how I'm understanding this. 10. Conclusions. LIGO did not detect Einstein gravitational waves or black holes. Black holes in Einstein's gravitational waves do not exist. They are not even consistent with general relativity. The LIGO instability has been interpreted as a gravitational wave produced by two merging black holes by a combination of theoretical fallacies, wishful thinking, and confirmational bias. Black holes are products of entire violations of the rules of pure mathematics. General relativity is riddled with logical inconsistencies, invalid mathematics, and impossible physics. The general theory of relativity cannot satisfy the usual conservation of energy and momentum for a closed system, and thereby is in conflict with a vast array of experiments, rendering it untenable at a fundamental level. LIGO is reported to so far have cost taxpayers $1.1 billion. Just as the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, such large sums of public money demand justification by eventually finding what they said they would. All right. So that's the conclusion to all this. And I hope you guys enjoyed the paper. I'll add some final thoughts or not, see what's up. So there we have it, guys. This is a guy that went through all the math, went through all the logical fallacies and inconsistencies, broke it down, said that these gravitational waves can't even exist, and the fact that these people
Ladies and gentlemen,
would hold a press conference announcing such is really just a stunt to justify the fact that they spent 1.1 billion dollars to make a thing to validate theoretical concepts that are just apparently logical inconsistencies and invalid mathematics and impossible physics stacked upon each other, making the general theory of relativity.